Hi, I'm Cautex, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about some tips and tricks that you can use on Mythic Kel'Thuzad as a DPS warrior. These tricks and timings are for the new version of the fight that was recently implemented. I'm currently Night Fae, and I did this fight soulbound with Karain. The frequency of ad spawns on this fight makes First Strike incredibly strong overall, as well as for boss damage. If you're Kyrian, then you should be going the standard Mykonikos build. As for spec, Arms is definitely the play on this fight, though that's not to say that Fury is bad, it's just that Arms has a couple tricks that make it really valuable for progression. You should be taking Warbreaker, and while on the original version of this fight it was absolutely best to take defensive stance, now it's better to take Bounding Stride. The reason for this is that previously there was large periods of time where you would be just standing around not doing damage, so you could use it to reduce the damage that you are taking, while also not having to worry about the fact that it makes you do less damage as well. Also, you could use it to fish for soul fragments by swapping in and out of defensive stance during these times. But because you're not standing around holding for CDs anymore, there's never really a time that you're not going to be doing damage. And on top of that, assuming that everyone's using their raid CDs when they're supposed to, there's never really a time where you should need to enter defensive stance in order to survive. On the flip side, being able to use Heroic Leap more often is really useful on this fight. For cooldown usage, you have two choices. You can optimize for boss damage, or you can optimize for AoE damage. Basically, if you're optimizing for boss damage, you should be using your cooldowns on pull, and then at the start of each boss phase. If you're optimizing for AoE damage, then you should be saving your cooldowns until the glacial spikes come up, and then using them there in each phase. The big reason why this matters is because of Chaos Bane. If you choose to optimize for AoE damage, it's almost guaranteed that you're not going to have Chaos Bane rolling when you use your CDs. Whereas if you're optimizing for boss damage, there is a pretty decent chance that you're going to have Chaos Bane for your cooldowns, and that extra 900 strength during Avatar, Warbreaker, and Overwhelming Power Crystal makes a massive difference. To help your chances of getting this lineup to occur, when you're transitioning into the intermission phase, I would take note of your soul fragment stacks, and if you have under 10, then you should go fishing for some soul fragments by casting Battle Shout, using Spell Reflect, or intervening somebody. If you've got more than 11 stacks, then you should definitely not go fishing unless you're about to lose those stacks because of them timing out. Now, it's still very RNG dependent as to whether or not you're going to get a Chaos Bane proc during the intermission or be able to carry that through until the next boss phase. But with this method, I would say that about 60 to 70% of the time, I would be able to be at 13 or 14 stacks as we entered the next boss phase, which meant that basically I would only be waiting a couple seconds before I would be at 15 stacks and proc Chaos Bane. Now, there's a couple of other little things about the timings. You should be using your Bladestorm for the Glacial Spikes. Once you have deep wounds on the Glacial Spikes from your Bladestorm, assuming that you're not fixated, don't be afraid to basically wiggle around and try to get deep wounds on as many of the fixate ads as possible. Next, you're going to be able to use Warbreaker twice during each boss phase. I use my first one with my cooldowns, and then my second one is going to come up usually around the time that the second set of tank ads are spawning. Because these tank ads die super fast, I personally hold Warbreaker then, and then I'm going to use it to hit the boss and also all of the little fixate ads once that set of tank ads is dead. Now, this is mostly just padding, but I wasn't fond of holding it even longer to use it during the intermissions, as damage really isn't needed there, and holding it too long can interfere with having it line up with your other cooldowns in the next boss phase. Now, how you deal with the tank ads is probably the most impactful thing that you can do for your DPS on this fight, aside from deciding whether or not you want to pad by blowing your cooldowns on the glacial spikes and the little ads, or use them on the boss. You should be looking to minimize your downtime as much as possible, while also hitting as many of the tank ads as you can to proc First Strike, though you should try and stagger these hits so that you can maximize the uptime of your First Strike procs. And additionally, you should be trying to use Sweeping Strikes whenever ads are spawned in a way that is conducive to using Sweeping Strikes. For me personally, I always hit Sweeping Strikes as the tank ads are coming up, because most of the time there's going to be one that's like right under the boss. Additionally, you're going to have Sweeping Strikes for every set of tank ads. As for getting to these ads, here's my general thought process on how to optimize your movement abilities. I broke down which ability I was going to use to get to the ads based off of where the nearest one spawned on the side that had the ad that I needed to interrupt. Basically, if the closest ad that wasn't on the boss was before what I called the corner, meaning that it was in the area marked in green, I would use charge to get to that mob, and if there were any other mobs further than that, I could use my second charge to get to it, and then I would use Heroic Leap to get back to the boss. If the closest ad was past the corner, which is the area marked in red, then I would use Heroic Leap to get out to the ads, and then I would use Intervene plus charge to get back to the boss. I would always save Soul Shape for getting back to the stack point if I got targeted by the silence after I had charged or leapt out. Now, if you do get targeted by the silence, once that's done, if there are any high health tank ads that are still up, you should get to them ASAP and help kill them. If there are a couple still up and they're all below half health, then you should hit the closest one with a heroic throw to proc for strike and then just stay on the boss. During the intermissions, priority number 1 is to make sure that you never miss your interrupt on whatever Banshee you've been assigned. They're practically made out of paper, so I basically never actively DPS them unless the call to kill everything up top has been made. Instead, I'm pretty much exclusively cleaving off of the A-bombs. While doing this, make sure that you plan out how you're going to get back to your Banshee, because unless you're last in the interrupt rotation, you're almost certainly going to be needing to do 2 interrupts over the course of the intermission. One super valuable thing that you can do to help your guild progress on this fight is to make a macro to use Die by the Sword and AoE Taunt. If the A-bombs are alive when KT comes active again, they're going to one-shot your tanks. So you should keep an eye on the health of the Remnant, and if it gets to like 2 to 3% and the A-bombs aren't going to be dead within the next second, hit that macro. Because of the cooldown on AoE Taunt, you're not going to be able to do this every intermission. You would be able to do it either on the first and third intermissions, or only on the second one. Now, if you have 2 arms warriors, then you would be able to have a taunt for every intermission, but make sure that you coordinate who is going to get which intermission so you don't accidentally overlap. Also, it is better to be a bit early with the taunt rather than a bit late, and this is for 2 reasons. First, you can't predict exactly when the A-bomb's melee hits are going to land, so if KT comes out and the A-bomb's melee hit is a 1/10 of a second later, if you were slow to taunt, then your tanks are dead. Even if they were to melee swing just before KT comes out, so you have a bit of time, if you're slow with the taunt, while you won't get your tanks killed by doing this, you might also taunt KT, which could get you killed instead. Now for this kill, we did things cleanly in the intermission, so we didn't need to use this, but during progression, it really helped ease the learning curve of the intermissions. Now it's also worth noting that you're able to use your Die by the Sword when blowing up the glacials, and it will be back up in time for you to use it with an AoE taunt if needed. And, well, that's all of the tricks that I was able to figure out during my guild's progression on this fight. If you know of any tricks that I didn't mention, please tell me about them in the comments. Otherwise, as always, tell me why my opinions are dumb. And lastly, I just want to say thank you for watching this video, and subscribe for more.